Vincent immediately jumped up and grabbed his sword. He did not expect that Revan would decide to attack like this. But now he knows about his fencing skill and the same method will not work. Realizing the whole essence of the problem, the black-haired man ordered Sari to leave immediately. However, the girl could not do that, and then the blonde scoundrel declared that he was in infinite debt to Vincent, because he was able to forgive Revan's rudeness, and also gave him a miraculous stone. And the blonde man, in turn, tried to restore his hand, at the cost of his father's hand, but in the end everything was resolved without bloodshed. Revan got everything, but in the end he couldn't give anything in return. At the same time, the blue-eyed guy admits his cowardice, and now he wants to change. And after thinking about it, he decided that the most valuable thing he could provide was his loyalty. With these words, the kid bowed his head in front of his new master. Sari was stunned, because Revan himself knelt in front of her master. The black-haired man smiled at this event, but Yulion was in no hurry to rejoice, because he could not so easily believe Revan, but Vincent does not doubt the guy's loyalty, because he put his sword in front of him, and this is an act of giving his life to another person and means that the kid in front of them is serious. At the same time, the ghost really remembers something similar in the books according to the custom of martial arts. But even so he is in no hurry to trust the blonde, but he was visited by a good idea. The black-haired man himself took out his crimson sword from its scabbard and put it on the guy's shoulder. Thereby he accepted the oath of Revan and also promised to stand by the side of the blonde youngster, as long as he was faithful to him. Revan himself was amazed, he doubted, but the sword in the hands of Vincent really turned out to be a crimson lotus, which means that he really was awarded by the head of the family. Realizing this, the blue-eyed man decides that he will not regret swearing his allegiance to such an unusual person. Sari still couldn't believe her eyes, because her master had really changed, and now those times when Vincent was called a loser seemed like a terrible dream to her. At this moment, Yulion interrupts his red-eyed friend and offers him to get the blessing of the Dwarf King from Revan. At the same time, a woman with a flower in her hair notifies the head that a promising black-haired young man plans to enter the Crimson Crevice next year. At the same time, the gray-haired father is interested in what about the conquest of the Crimson Demon. In response, Versa tells the chapter that the boy did not refuse her help and did not listen to the features of the Crimson Demon, and she also notices that the guy looked pretty confident. The Crimson Demon can be attacked with 3 stars or more, since these creatures have no physical form. The reason why his conquest is a rite of passage. This is an observation of how a person will cope with a demon, and the opportunity to prove the presence of 3 stars or more. And the most interesting thing is that they noticed how Revan Adenka started staying with the kid for the last couple of days. At this time, Blue-Eyed taught the guy to create a feature. Revan says to Red-Eye to create a loop once again. This is a very tense moment. Earlier, Vincent gave a vulgar book to his new friend and stated that he wanted to receive the blessing of the Dwarf King, through the methods described in this book. Although Revan hardly believed in the reliability of this manuscript, but he agreed to help the crazy guy. But for this, the blue-eyed one will have to direct the flow, and Vincent will have to meditate near him. In fact, the black-haired one must entrust his life to the impudent, but the Berserker does not see any problems in this, because Revan swore allegiance to him. Now that they began to actively practice this technique, Blue-Eyed wondered if he could also entrust his life? But he knew for sure that he could not, and realizing this, the blonde was surprised, because Vincent again made him a loser, but for him it's not so bad. He feels lost so joyfully for the first time. However, mana without an image, no one would have imagined that the direct heir of the family would use such a crazy way. At this time, Yulion asks the guy to be slower and more careful, but the red-eyed is unhappy that the ghost is scolding him again, because he himself offered to use the help from Revan to acquire his features. But Yulion is not going to retreat so easily, because he cannot allow the black-haired man to do whatever he wants with his body. Because right now he is just jumping off the roof in front of his eyes. Soon Revan tells Vincent that the guy is too sharp and he should be slower. Prixrak was glad that besides him there are adequate people in the room. However, Daven lived his past life like this. He could not achieve anything without risking his life, and sometimes for results you need to take risks and move on. With these words, he decided to finish the chain, but Yulion begged the guy to stop, because at this rate he could just die. At the same moment, the matter would be resolved after a few seconds. He needs quite a bit, and then the flow will be completed. He just needs to connect it. The frightened Revan tried to stop the man, because it's too early for this stage. But the guy didn't listen to anyone and successfully connected the chain, Then the sweaty Daven was glad that he finally managed to do it. However, the chain suddenly broke and a terrible explosion occurred in the building. Revan received a strong blow, but his fall was relieved by the bed. At this time, the head was checking with Versa. He was interested in when the next set would be before joining the Crimson Fortress. The same one announces that there are about 6 months left. At the same time, the gray-haired man declares that the guy has already defeated a martial artist with 2 stars, so it should be easier for him. Vincent himself rose from the dead at this time. Revan began to scold his partner, because he clearly overdid it with speed. For the blue-eyed guy, this process took 6 months, although the black-haired one is insanely fast, but Revan assumes that the red-eyed one will need at least 2 months to achieve this goal. At the same time, the head said that 1 month, that's what he asks to tell the guy that he has to defeat the monster in 1 month. Daven, littered with books, already thought he was reincarnated again. Raelsa hurried down the corridor. She had to pass a message from the head of the house to the young Mr. Vinzen. It also says that the guy must complete the initiation ceremony in 1 month, and the woman, realizing that Vinzen does not have much time left, sincerely hopes for the success of this guy. The girl opens the door and a terrifying sight appears before her eyes. The room was completely destroyed, and the guys themselves clearly suffered because of what happened, and then Raelsa politely asked the young gentleman to explain the situation. But the black-haired man hurries to calm the chief chamberlain and says that he was just meditating, but Sari, with tears in her eyes, asks the young gentleman not to lie, although she knows nothing about mana, but she knows that meditation does not exactly lead to this. At the same time, he apologizes to the maid, and Raelsa notices this, because the young master's attitude to others has clearly changed. At the same time, the woman sighs heavily and skips this topic, but declares that whatever it is, he must hurry, since the head of the family gave him a message he must finish the rite of consecration in 1 month. Yulion warns his partner that his father has never changed the time frame before, and the guy guesses what this means, namely, his father has big plans for him. Raelsa warns that as soon as a month has passed from this day, she will personally accompany the guy as a defender. Looking back, she hopes with all her heart that the young master will be able to defeat the monster, and she also expects that he will train with all his might to achieve this goal. But Revan is upset, because according to his calculations, Vinzen will be able to receive the blessing of the Dwarf King in at least 2 months, and 1 month is too short a period of time. Red-eyed, hearing the words of the chief chamberlain, decides to hurry, but Sari begs his master not to overwork too much. At the same time, Daven promises her this and, looking at the girl, notices a huge amount of mana in her. After that he again tries to calm the maid and asks her to temporarily leave, because he needs to discuss something with Revan. After the door slammed shut, the blue-eyed guy announced that 1 month is categorically not enough, and they should find another way. However, Vinzen shows them the mana chain at the same second and asks the blonde if it is correct. The blonde guys were shocked, because the guy somehow miraculously did it, and once he finished with the chain, he wishes to proceed with the manifestation of the peculiarity. Although Yulion knew that capable people can do anything, but even this is too much. Now they don't have to wait a month to exceed their father's expectations. 2 weeks later, the forest. The Berserker decided to begin the manifestation of his peculiarity. The blonde guys were eagerly watching what was happening, but before starting, Vincent asks for a twofold chance to step away from Revan, because an explosion may occur like last time. But he refuses. The guy intends to see his success with his own eyes. The black-haired man looked at his friend with a smile and began to create a magic chain. As soon as it was created, an unusual symbol appeared in the air and Yulion experienced an old feeling. Looking back, he saw a hefty dwarf in armor with a hammer in his hands. Out of fear he tried to talk to this god, and after Yulion wondered since when did he have the ability to see Boggett at such a high level? But he did not even pay attention to such a small spirit and began the process of blessing. A stunning bright light was shed on the black-haired guy, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a newfound feature in front of him. Revan hastened to explain that this is a blessing from the king of the dwarves, namely the greatest of the blessings of protection strengthening the body. Although this is a step lower than a man of steel than a blonde, but this is a big breakthrough, especially if we assume that it really didn't take him even a month to do it, then it's really frightening. Soon the king of the dwarves disappeared into thin air. Now with the strength he received, he will be able to surpass the servants in the mastery of the sword, because he founded the foundation for the conquest of the Crimson Demon. Vincent thanks the blonde for his help, but he has one more request to Revan. 2 days later, now the red-eyed Berserker is ready to go to the lair of the Crimson Demon. The black-haired man apologizes to Railsa for such an unexpected request, but he is determined to exceed his father's expectations. The woman is worried, because the guy did not even take advantage of the full term of the chapter, and 2 weeks earlier than it should be. She is not sure if he will succeed. Railsa defended those who passed the rite of initiation 3 times, and during this time there was not a single one who would have failed this test. And a woman can't afford for Savannah's son to be the first to fail. Therefore, she asks the guy to be extremely careful during the test, but the guy calms her down and declares that the chief chamberlain has nothing to worry about, because he will definitely be able to defeat the Crimson Demon without any problems. The carriage is heading into the depths of the forest, and there is complete silence inside it. But Vincent is a little upset, because he does not need a guard on such a mission, but Yulion declares that the woman is here not only for protection, but also to fix the drop flute from the monster and keep an eye on the guy. The dialogue of the guys is interrupted by Railsa. She is interested in whether the red-eyed has studied his upcoming opponent, because having 3 stars and above is the first condition for conquering the Crimson Demon. But the woman believes that the young master has not yet reached this level. Yulion notices that the guy really has never been interested in the Crimson Demon, but he asks those present not to worry. But it's still strange. Apparently Arslan arranged this test, because ironically, the Crimson Demon is the first monster that Daven defeated in his previous life. But the girl continues to insist on her own and asks the guy not to lower his vigilance. At the same time, Vincent wonders why the chief chamberlain is trying so hard to help him? To which the woman gives a very simple answer. Because it's all because she is a guard and an observer on this test. However, Red-Eyed does not pay attention to these words and tries to get to the truth. He can't stop thinking about stealing money. The woman, in turn, says that she simply did not have enough funds, but Vincent assumes that she deliberately showed him this weakness, which he was able to take advantage of. After hearing this, the girl looked intently at the youngster. But he wants to stop this conversation, because if a woman does not want to talk about it, then he is not going to force her. Soon the horse stopped, which meant that they had arrived at the place. After getting out of the cart, the guys carefully looked around. This place is the lair of the Crimson Demon, although he does not have a specific name, but people call these ruins an old temple. The guy does not realize that there is a temple here, but then Rail hurries to tell that this is the memorial of the first head of the Arslan family. It was erected after he destroyed one of the followers of Archdemon Daven. And again Arslan, an old friend and a Crimson Demon. The guy realizes that this cannot be an ordinary coincidence. Taking out her sword, the chief chamberlain announced that she was ready to begin the test. At the same second she put up a barrier. The guys were surprised, because it was an amazing mana barrier. It is configured in such a way that only one monster is able to pass through it. At the same moment, a monster with a scythe appeared in front of the young gentleman. At the same time the guy asked to watch Railsa more carefully so that later he would not miss more than one detail during the report. With these words he was going to prove his value to the Adenka family. After the words were said, a crazed demon rushed at the black-haired guy and swinging his scythe, he was preparing to strike the first blow. Yulion warns his partner that he should avoid this attack, and then use the path of the sword, but Vincent does not agree with this advice, because creating a distance will be beneficial for the owner with a longer weapon, such as a scythe. And then the guy decides to get closer. The monster did not expect such actions, and he has to hold the defense instead of the planned attack. The Berserker was counting on this. He's not going to let the demon swing the scythe. At the same time, he makes a series of rapid strikes, but they were all successfully blocked. In the fight against an enemy with a large weapon, the best solution would be to come close, and the red-eyed man knew this very well. But in his first real fight at the age of 14, few people could use this tactic so perfectly, and Railsa was impressed by this, because the guy looked like a man who had already conquered the Crimson Demon many times. At the same time, Vincent was impressed by the acquired feature of the Dwarf King, because with the help of it, his endurance greatly increased, and if you consider that his body is untrained, then this is a huge plus. But all this is just the beginning of his search for the path of the sword. At this moment, the guy jumps away from the scythe and jumps away for a long distance. He picked the perfect time to increase the distance. The Crimson Demon is very aggressive, but he must have been very tired due to the support of constant defense, and Red-Eye understands that, apparently, the next attack of the monster must be significant, and also have a lot of gaps. At this moment, closing points appear in front of the guys, which connect the path of his sword. Vincent is going to get rid of the recoil of his sword's skill with the help of his special feature, and uses the sword's skill, as well as body strengthening. After that, he cuts the crimson monster into pieces, and only a red core remains of it. The core fell to the ground, and turning to Raelsa, he asks her if she saw everything? But the woman was excited, because judging by the guy's reaction, he really does not know that the crimson demon cannot be defeated with one blow, because he has 2 lives. At this moment, a newly minted opponent appears behind the back of Vincent, and he already strikes his furious blow, but the mysterious guy meets him with a smile. The worried Chamberlain shouts to the youngster, but he already knew what to do. The guy immediately dodges the deadly attack and realizes with a smile that the monster has not changed a bit in these 500 years, when suddenly the tip of the scythe flashes in front of his face, but he manages to evade this as well. However, the black-haired one realizes that the monster has become faster, and if you look, the appearance of the crimson demon has also changed, yet the red-eyed one understands that these scoundrels have also evolved over the past 500 years. However, this is not news for Raelsa, because everyone knows that the revived crimson demon goes into a rage, and his speed and strength improves. At this moment, the young master began to be suppressed, but he continued to successfully dodge, but now his escape route is blocked by the wall behind. At the same time, the monster strikes a vertical blow, and the remains of the temple behind the black-haired man suffered changes. At the same time, Yulion offers to change plans. But Daven says that it's not the time for this yet, and they have to first make the monster lower his vigilance. Because the demon thinks the same way, he tries to corner them for the sake of delivering the final blow, and when he is fully prepared for it, then the Berserker will realize his plan. Watching this sad picture, Raelsa kept herself in hand so as not to get into the fight, because her intervention as an observer would mean the defeat of the young master, so she asks for help from her dead friend, because she does not want to destroy the future of his son, Lady Sarvan. In the past, the purple-haired woman extended a helping hand to Raelsa when she was in trouble and invited her to join her journey to become a martial artist. After leaving the ruined family, Raelsa survived by farming on the border of the country, and it was enough shock for her to meet such a monster as this Optimus girl. At first the chief chamberlain considered the long-haired crazy, but Sarvana asked to join her journey and Raelsa could not refuse such a lovely girl. At that time, Sarvana was traveling with Khan and Versa, and they were not against the fact that another traveler would join them. At that moment the exhausted girl believed that she had finally lost her mind due to a head wound during a fight, or maybe she was influenced by Sarvana's bravery. But in the end she joined him in their adventure for the sake of becoming an Aiden legend. It was a wonderful time in which the main characters were Lady Sarvana and they were a great team with her. In her memory she remained impossibly strong and beautiful, she had the power to make people smile. In the hopeless life of Raelsa she was a ray of light. But one day Sarvana died. The girl could not hold back her tears, but her mistress left behind her legacy, and then Raelsa firmly decided to protect this child from the harsh life of a child, the heir of the main family of Aiden, until he becomes a respected martial artist. However, fate was cruel. The guy was born a loser who had to crawl on his knees in front of his younger ones. Raelsa saw it all. For 14 years, she counted hundreds of similar cases of bullying. At the same time, the thought of leaving the Adenka family began to flash through her mind, because she was unable to continue looking at this loser Vincent, until one day she caught stupid Wilson, who was lying behind the door. The frightened guy hurried to explain himself, and announced that he had acted like a servant of young Mr. Vincent. And then the girl heard from the impudent man those words that she did not expect to hear in this life, namely, the young gentleman was recognized by the head of the family. Then she finally saw a ray of hope again, and therefore she sincerely believes in her young master. After all, he can't stop at this stage. A crimson monster swung at the black-haired guy once again, and at the same time Vincent gave the command, and at the same moment a red figure ran out of the forest and blocked this incredible attack, and it was a Revan Adenka.